Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. I'm moving slowly towards the end of the timeline series. In the last episode in the series, we went through the budget template itself and how to fill that in. However, when preparing the budget, the smallest part of it is knowing the budget categories and terms. The biggest part of the work is related to collecting the information, correcting this information, negotiating the budget levels for the partners, and all in all dealing with inconsistencies in communication and difficult budget fights in between the partners. I invited my old colleague and friend Jonas Hansen, who is Senior Funding Manager in the Danish ICT cluster Digitallead, to go through all the little and big things that makes finalizing the budget a big challenge for anyone, no matter the organizational talent and experience. It became a double episode. In this second part, we are sharing the experience of partners that practice strategic jerkness, which means that they will deliberately try to cheat or blackmail themselves to a high budget. And then we're digging into the horror of budget negotiations and renegotiations that can take the air out of any proposal writer. We share with you all our combined experience from years of working practically with this, which will give you an excellent idea of what you can expect when preparing the budget in the final phase. Please enjoy.
Grant. We'll get to the negotiations in a minute. I just want to touch upon these things because they're important they're important that we share with the listeners the bad partners you will run into. So what I call strategic jerkness, when some partners deliberately, you mentioned it, sort of touched it some minutes ago, but when a partner is deliberately trying to cheat. When they move figures around, if they are told that they have to scale down their resources or man months, then they scale up their per hour or man month rate, so they end on the same amount of, it's these things. You have these partners that will try to trick you, and if you're inexperienced, they have it easier than if you are experienced or if you have help. And then you have the ones that are pushing their funding lock. So they don't make a conservative budget; they make an optimistic budget. Yeah, they say, but then let's just move it a little bit here, move a little bit here, move a little bit here, and what happens is this is a natural thing to do. This pushing your funding lock, that's not as bad as the strategic jerkness, because that is a deliberate trying to squeeze the rest. The pushing funding lock is saying, we need to cover. We just add a little bit here and there because we need to be sure that we are covered with the activities we do. And this is it's a basic human and business, as an organization. This is a basic human thing.
It happens most places. I've done it myself.
It's natural. It's natural to do. So, but you need to be aware of it when you sit and have to deal with these things, because when you come to the
coordinator at the left side, you can just ease everybody down a little bit. And then you might be where you want them to be. So it's not, you're probably operating with a working budget for most of the proposal time that is too high.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens. Like you said, you're sending in the nice way, you're sending out budget templates, or you're just asking partners, how much will this cost? Give me your wish budget. And that wish budget is a budget, so that's always high.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah. And then you have, I think we also touched, but the partner you sit with have a push in their own organization for a specific budget. Because this is what happens
Yeah.
that when they try to the strategic jerkness, that they know that they have to begin. It's that they're pushed to. The strategic jerkness is more. That's where you have a manager at manager level that knows exactly what they're doing. This element pushing from internal man is a person who sits squeezed in the middle, like between two nails, and she knows what the manager wants when they talked internally about what to do with this wonderful project they've been invited into. And then they have the push from the consortium and the proposal coordinator on squeezing the budget, and there they try to, and anyone would probably do that. Try to see if they can, because it's the manager, it's their job, so they would please the manager first, so to say, and in the end, if it really gets hairy on the negotiations that we would talk about just shortly now, there you would need to sometimes even take the manager into the negotiation process to say that this is how it's going to be, because then you're out of the project if you don't. Something like this, you need to make the manager understand that this is how it is. It's not something that's negotiable. It's like this. No,
true, and you see very different tactics of how to budget optimize.
Yeah. Can you share?
Hypothetically, what I would do
as an intro for the negotiations, budget optimization. What would you have? What have you seen?
Sometimes when everybody's talking salaries, you see people, of course, suddenly bringing in higher name researchers, people involved. Sometimes it's easier for research institutions to do so, because you suddenly bring in a couple of extra professors under the guise of saying, we need these names. Mm-hmm. At this point, you probably know these people will never be involved. You can detect it if they start removing PhDs, for instance, because they're quite cheap, and then suddenly putting on more expensive people. Mm-hmm. And they can do this quite easily. Another more insidious one is suddenly start pushing up travel budget, other kinds of budgets. Mm-hmm. I've also seen people trying to force a strategic linked partner in, or a specific subcontractor in. Mm-hmm. We're all talking specific things now that are going to devalue the proposal itself. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult things to actually include in a proposal unless it makes perfect sense, and it's always been the case that you have to do this. Mm-hmm. But these are some of the issues I've seen. A partner that suddenly do not want to be a partner, but want to be a subcontractor in order to press up costs, and thus defeating the whole classic EU funding logic that if there's any way that you could conceivably are important for this proposal and can be a partner beneficiary, then you should be so instead of a subcontract. So there's many different ways to do this. You might see a partner suddenly start pushing or pulling activities towards where they live to see if they can maximize activity budgets as well. And that's in those senses, if this comes directly after an issue or problematic budget negotiation, then I would start worrying about how are these activities actually going to be.
Yeah. Because that's what it comes down to in the real world, if the money is actually won.
It does, and you have to be aware that that EU funding is embroiled with a lot of bad partners once it starts. Yeah. There's a lot of things for Olaf to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of criminal activities sometimes even.
Yeah, because people push it their luck if they can, especially if they know the system and they know how to can squeeze it. That's I know from P&O that we always followed the rules, of course, and we did diligent consultancy on that. But there was always a push when we were preparing proposals that the manager of the director should be in the listed as a part of the team, because their hourly rate is through, like that's a high rate. I never had any questions on that. Funnily, maybe because I see it as an authority that you do the proposal, but internally it was a strategy that I've never seen in the things I did, my manager doing anything.
It's a lot, but I can tell you that it can go wrong as well. Because I was.
Then they
this happens
participate.
many
Maybe they
places.
participate in kickoff meeting or something like this, but actual activities they won't do. It's just there for window dressing. Yeah.
I have
to
been
get a
in
little bit of a higher
situation
budget.
where the tech startup that I had, not the one that I worked in, but another one in a proposal, where the person doing the budget for them assumed that his founders would be the highest earners in the organization, and thus put them on for what he thought. But when he got actual numbers, he found out that they actually earned almost nothing. And instead, as classic founders often do, keeping the money in the company, meaning they were actually the lowest earner in the whole organization. Oh, very special.
Well, I think the consultancy business of grants consultancy, it's so under pressure on the fee side, so they try to push like everybody do, and they do it on a level where it's justifiable. Anyone from P&O would be able to justify this if Olaf came around.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I have to say that in a lot of cases, I think it's. I understand why this is, because you're dealing with a quite new industry.
Yeah.
A Danish public institution would, without batting an eye, spend a lot of money on private consultants advising their C-level, but or new strategies. But a consultant trying to win them a proposal that will actually give them direct and paid activity in years to come, this might not be a bracket that they are actually allowed to spend money on, or equally as sad, something they're not used to spending money on, and thus they can't. Yeah. I've been in an organization where the organization you were in were helping us, where I was not allowed to spend money on a proper consultant, and this stems from people who not know how hard it is to actually do these projects, and also some miscalculated or they assume that it would be equally as cheap for a person like me and somebody else to do it themselves.
Yeah.
In an organization, not understanding that this could be an almost full-time occupation for 4 months, and thus I'm actually way more expensive than just paying the consultant to coordinate this action.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to do several proposals, and you might be in a position as a private consultant where if nobody is accepting a percentage of the winnings, for instance, as a as a fee if you win, and people are not really thus accepting the prepayment that necessarily is probably quite high if it's a complex proposal, then you have to find your money elsewhere.
Yeah, it's the grant. I have a lot of sympathy for the grants consultancy business, because it's not a sector that is, I've seen it from inside how much people work and how the outside world look at that sector. You have many people looking down on it, frowning upon it, and even hard working consultants from junior level to senior level that often don't really get the credit they deserve for what the value they actually give to the partners that are involved in it. It's how I've been fighting myself for people to understand that there is a value in the work you do when you do a proposal that they cannot find anywhere else. But that's the logic of it that many has, that but if you're not even sure to get the funding, why should we pay you money? This kind of attitude. You meet it all the time as a private consultant, and you're one big excuse of yourself. Many, I wasn't, but many are, especially if you're a young consultant. This kind of yeah. No.
And what I found out is that these people are basically a fantastic source of recruiting cheaper business developers.
Yeah.
Because it's, of course, business developers might disagree, but it's essentially sometimes the same thing.
Yeah. Indeed.
It even involves quite a lot of extra things. So if you are a proposal writer and project developer, and you don't like the smell of the bakery, then you might be better off looking into going into business as a business developer instead, because you even probably knows a little bit about IPR negotiations, GDPR, legal compliance, all kinds of different regulations on the EU level, and negotiations.
Yeah, and you've been writing proposals where you've been rolling out business models for technologies, new technologies.
Pitching complex ideas.
Combined with the fact that you've been doing business development for your own organization practically. So there's a lot of tools there that many can use. Mm-hmm. And this is also what happens. It's not a business where people stay a lot. You have the dieharders that stay, but there's a draft, always a draft running through consultancy businesses, because people, unless they're well treated. Yeah. You have small boutique companies often that you have First Mile in Denmark, for instance, or have contact to a Greek Cypriotic company that because you treat your people well at the same time as you give them career opportunities and so on, and value the work they do, then the people stay. But it's difficult. No, it's a degradation here. We are moving into something totally different. And it's already a little long. Now we need to talk about negotiations, because this is an important thing to cover. You have negotiations and renegotiations, yeah? So first and foremost, what's just setting the scene, so you will have everybody forwarding back figures for you. That we covered quite intensely now. The different elements here that are bottlenecks and things you can stumble over. So you have the figures in, and then you need to fill things into and then you look at it, and it's often that you need to go back to the group and say, look, we need to negotiate some things here because it's too high here or there. It doesn't match the activity level here. It's a huge budget within a work package that's supposed to be at all where we are. So we need to sit down. So you have these meetings. This happens. You need to do that where you put people into a virtual room, and you go through it, and you get these figures, right? Then, or you ask people. So there are two versions. Either you ask them to look at it again, and you send it in, and they send it in. They negotiate inside the work packages how it's supposed to look. You receive that back. So that's sort of first step negotiations in between them and so on. And then you receive it, and it's still too high. And then you have the renegotiations or something. It's always, there can also be framework conditions that you missed. For instance, I made a bio-based industries project where there was a rule condition that we got aware of late that moved things in a wrong direction with the budget. So we had to go back to all parts and say we have to lower everybody. We need to find a way to reach this target. Anyways, no matter how, this is a horrible process.
I think one of the big dangers in this process is that it's an exhaustive process, of course. So it's also a part of, as when you see people in governments or parties are trying to negotiate something that's difficult. It's usually fatigue that wins out.
Yeah.
And it could be the same here. So the problem is that you can lose track on the real ball, meaning your application,
Yeah.
the application itself, the thing that needs to win the grant, which is not necessarily the few euros here or there, but much more important, the level of activities that you are proposing,
Yeah.
and the red thread that covers this whole very complex set of actions. So when you start cutting things off, because the blanket push down of everybody's budget, for instance, saying we're cutting 10% of everybody's budget, that can be very dangerous for some parties.
Yeah.
That might be a deal killer. So what's usually going to happen is that you decide to take out something. It could be as easy as a part of the travel budget, perhaps remove some participation in conferences, but I won't give you a lot of money. It might be removing a whole set of things, and suddenly you have ruined the balance that were in your proposal that you've been sweating about with a lot of other people. As a coordinator in an EU project, you're usually dealing with some quite heavy cross-disciplinary activities.
Yeah.
So you might not yourself be aware of the importance of what you're actually cutting now.
Exactly. So there's an overview here that's difficult. No matter how well you are into the content, you cannot have your eyes everywhere, because you have to deal with so many other things than specific in detail things in the content of the discussions in the work pack. So indeed, there is something, and I've tried it, you have tried it, that you sit and you have the real issue that you have is, if you have 100,000 euros you need to deal with in a 5 million budget, you will manage. It's not that difficult. But if you have a 6 million, so 1 million over budget of a 5 million proposal, then you're in trouble, because then you will go into the troubles that Jonas has just mentioned. And I tried it myself in the very rough way, where first of all people get very angry. Because they think from their end that they've been having talks and went into content discussions from one point of view that they have agreed on in long, complicated, like idea development sessions and so on.
And pitching this internally in their organization, perhaps.
Also that, and then you've 1 week left. And then they have to go back to, for instance, I tried it with Aalborg University, their department in Copenhagen, where they had to go back to 2 or 3 different teams, research teams, and force. It was a lot of money, because they had a high starting point of the budget. So it was, like it for them, they had to cut out whole sections, sub tasks that they had. Which affected throughout. This is difficult, and it's probably. I've tried processes where I tried to control it with the expected budget at an early phase, but we ended there anyways. So I think what I'm trying to say is that, and this is what is so horrible, what is so difficult about the budget project. You can be as well prepared and doing all the right things throughout the process, and you can still end up with a process where you have a lot of people being angry. So they start, first of all, they are angry that they have to cut, and that anger is directed either towards you as a proposal coordinator and or towards the way that the content discussion has run. So so here, and this is why the problem here is that if it gets too ugly, then the energy of what this should be about, positive energy about developing a really nice thing and something that everybody's looking forward to do, it starts to erode. If people start to say, "Oh, what is this bullshit we stepped into? Look, horrible process," or if they start to get the feeling that it's not well coordinated from your side in the proposal process, or if they start to get a grudge against the coordinator because they think that person was not good enough in this process leading up to this, then you sit only, not only do you have to negotiate in a very uncomfortable atmosphere, but you also start losing the confidence in the group.
These are often the same people that you need all kinds of other minute administrative details from. They might need to write something about the different profiles. They might need to go in and check something in the portal. They might need to go send you some documents. You are constantly asking the same people to do small things for you. If they start feeling that they lose confidence in you or are tired of the whole process, they'll start dragging their feet. It's human nature as well. Even though they've been investing months into this process, they might not be thinking, okay, I have to be professional for a week more, and then I can ignore these people until we win the grant in a year. You will have a harder time. These are people that you need to work with.
And what also happens if you start to moving into a bad atmosphere like this, and this I tried also, then you might have some strategic partners that start to blackmail you.
Oh yes,
because they know that there's only a week left. They know that this is a work of 6 months of
strategic jerkness we're getting into here.
Of 15 to 20 different partners with teams behind them, all the work and resource they put. So they start saying, okay, and also as when you work as a private consultant, they start to, because you are paid for the work you do, and if you don't submit, contracts are based on submission. So they start to use it as a leverage of jerkness to push on the budget side and say, but then we're going to leave, knowing that if they leave, it will fall apart.
It might even be in 2 different proposals.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Which I never minded actually when I was in P&O, because I said, look, if my proposal, if I'm going to do the best proposal here, and you cannot, no matter how much you want to copy paste, you cannot copy paste my head or my idea development here. So it's like this.
Basically agree. If I like people being honest about it, but not everybody is. But if it's a very, very strategically important partner in the project, I dislike it.
I always ask people to tell me.
Yeah,
and I would always say it's okay, but I want to know. The coordinator, no. That was a no-go. They could not be into it. But it's and I tried it a couple of times, but I don't mind when it's transparent, so I know. Because then because then it naturally, if the one you do not win, and if the other one would win, and then when it starts to roll, and if you see that they've copy-pasted things that you develop here, then it's going to destroy their credibility towards the whole group that they were sitting with here. So I was very clear about these things. That
you have to be clear about the effects that this is going to have, because not everybody is thinking long-term strategically like this. I was in a funding process, again, not an EU funding process, but in a different funding process with an international consortium last year, 2022, where during the project or during the application phase, I had an inkling that the main important local partner were playing several horses. And I told a person from there that I would appreciate if they were honest about it, just so I knew. And they didn't really want to discuss it. And I can understand a person not really thinking about it. But at the end, I was able to see the other application that was a winning application, ours were not. And I could see them offering a service in the application phase that they said would be impossible for us in our consortium. And that was a time issue, I could tell, which are going to make me think again, working with this partner again.
Of course.
Because if they've been honest all the way through, saying, we've been working with this partner maybe months before you, or this is more tactically important for us. We only have this amount of people that can go out find these types of partners. So you're getting a smaller service, but that's the way it has to be. The problem is that probably would make me adjust their budget.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes, honesty is best, of course.
Yeah, and you know what I would do in that case? I would get in touch with them and say, look, I can see what you have offered here, and we had this talk, and so it is going to be difficult for me to work with you. You know, I would probably let them know, because they need to feel the burn.
Yeah, but I figured out that this is a conversation I'm going to wait until they contact me again for a new application.
Okay, and actually I can see, I'm not sure, actually after I said it, I'm not really sure if I probably would
it's the feelings, right?
Yeah, you know what, I would leave it. I would never contact them again, and if they would contact me, I would say, nah, we don't need this. Thanks for reaching out, but there's no, I am preparing something, but we have already a partner covering that, so it's okay. Yeah, it's a delicate balance, but of course you don't want to. It's also a matter, because if they start to talk bad about you to people you do want to work with, so forget what I just said. My first advice.
Something that if somebody's acting out and you think this might be an experience, I'm not talking about somebody playing different horses, being a bad actor on purpose, but if somebody's starting to act out and not really that experienced with new projects, it sometimes can be benefit to have a good conversation about chances of winning. And what usually happens if it was a good process and you didn't win is that 80% of the consortium will decide to try again. Exactly. And at this time, you are, of course, standing on a big pile of shared experience, already conducted work. And if you have an excellent consultant or project coordinator or experienced people, you will be able to perhaps get an external evaluation team that can go deep dive into the application and see how can we improve this. And this is where that you get rid of partners who are a problem at the end, unless they're vital. So this is something that might change the tone a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I see this a lot. Suddenly it's over. Everybody says this was a good effort. Suddenly somebody writes, who wants to do it again? Mm-hmm. Everybody signs in. Some people are not invited to that meeting.
Indeed.
And then you're basically helping develop something that you're not being able to actually get something out of.
Yeah. It's this is human psychology and communication and interaction. These things, people, they see right through, especially the ones that have been doing this a lot, and the ones that are doing the strategic jerk approach. They are just not. They're not valid partners, so to say. You need to be able to trust people when you go into a 3, 4, 5 year project collaboration on a complex project. If you already don't trust people when you step into that, well, what are you doing there together then? And this is what the last sub bullet I have here, the really crunching negotiation. Yeah. So when you have, I know you have been in a position where you go through the budget, everybody's okay, but you have 2 or 3 core partners where they have to look at their budget and they really disagree. They are really up in each other's faces. Yeah. And there I have, I don't know if I would call myself the born diplomat, but I have managed to, in my time in P&O, to say, look, guys, we need to the Mexican standoff. Yeah, you need to we need to go into this room together, virtual room, and then we just take it mano a mano and discuss this discuss it down to the root of the problem. So we get it out of the way so we can submit this. And then you have a really tough meeting, maybe 2 hours, really rough and tough. But at the other end, I always managed to solve the problem. I always took the coordinator on board that meeting, me, the coordinator, and then the partners in case, sometimes 2 partners, sometimes 3. But always say, look, now we solve this. Because if you don't this fall, then there's no proposal. So it's wasted effort.
And it would usually also, oftentimes, will be the consultant's job to step in because it's difficult to be that tough. And that's why some experienced partners will do this very late strategic jerkness of trying to adjust the budget at the end after maybe a 6 months development period where everybody has become great friends and been on writing retreats together and visiting each other's locations, having dinners together. They've been working on separate stuff together in between, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where tactically annoying partners will really start doing something about it. Suddenly start bringing this up because they're considering that the coordinator might be too nice or have too invested into this proposal to not just cave in. And this is where you, as an outside consultant, have a big job.
Yeah.
And it is diplomacy because you're working for everyone.
Yeah.
And you cannot afford to start having bad rumors about you circulating or whole organization blacklisting you.
And what you do here, just for everybody out there, that for general advice on this, you really have to, it's close sidekick, so to say, with the coordinator. You need to have communication generally throughout the whole process, but especially one of the many reasons why you should have that close collaboration, communication with the coordinator is when you reach a situation like this, because you need to have pre-meetings with that person, totally calibrate and put down a strategy for that rough meeting. How do you approach it? How do you suggest? What solution do you suggest if they reject it? What do you put on the table as consequence? Do we throw someone out? It's down to this. It's down at this rough level where you need to, but then and not even shake your hand about, say, but then I have to close the process, and not bluffing. You don't bluff, because sometimes you have to do this. Sometimes you have to close a proposal process. So you need to for them to understand that this is a real threat. It's not something that you're saying as a negotiation trick. They need to understand that this is how it is. It's also a matter of, for instance, understanding probably how a European project works. And that you often have that if you have big multinationals that don't really understand, or I've tried that, where you forget everything you know about commercial projects. You have to understand this, or you're out, and everything, you can forget it, and we will not invite you in again for any future projects. Or you really have to have that strategy on that pushes it to the limit, where they cannot. Okay, then we find a solution. Then we do this and that.
It's difficult if you're dealing with these kinds of super egos who are used to winning everything in their line of work, but don't really understand how it works here. Then you have people who perhaps even enjoy these kinds of horrible negotiations.
Psychopaths.
Yeah, exactly. Or they get a rush out of, and they're used to winning these things.
The dick measure contest.
Yeah. I used to represent somebody who sent me out with these horrible requests to consortiums, and I said at the end I simply couldn't do it anymore. I was just not. I could just see this was not going well.
Yeah.
That is a very different game. And you need a lot of people.
What I can say is that when you end such a meeting successfully, I always managed. That doesn't say that that is, as I also just said, it needs to be a real threat. So sometimes things fall to, I have at colleagues where things fell in the end because they couldn't reach an agreement, and that's what happens. But I manage myself luckily. It's also, I guess, due to sort of capacity that I have, I guess, as a coordinator of these things. But I managed, and when you finish that meeting, you feel very good. It's a very, very nice feeling that you get all these cocks, all these bulls, all these very hardcore people, also women. Sometimes, of course, it's not just men here. It's a very rough negotiation process, and then you manage, and everybody's happy. And then you get the happiness, so to say, across the group that everything is solved. And
I think it's become harder. I think we see way more inexperienced partners in the game, and post-COVID, we see I see more reluctance to meet physically.
yeah.
Even for my own organization, our travel budgets are lower, meaning when you don't have that physical contact, it does a lot to build relations. It does a lot to build respect. Once everything goes through Zoom and Teams, people, but this is just my theory, they are more prone to push more.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
It's a game changer, even though it's just a 2-day meeting halfway through the process. But it works. It means something, and for the consultant, the external consultant, it's even more important. Because, as you say, consultants are usually paid if you actually send it in. So either people assume the consultant is overpaid already in advance, or they know that they're not being paid unless it sends it in. So if they are being hard enough, they might even play on that, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
this
I
is
tried
all things
that
are difficult if you manage to actually meet up, make an impression, put some effort into the diplomacy when you meet people. That is so important, and I think that is one of the reasons why you have the track record you have of having successful partnerships that are agreeable towards each other. Is investing into the diplomacy section, or part of this work that is very hard to quantify and put money value on, but it works and it's important.
We're almost done. Is there anything else on this? I think it's okay now.
Yeah, I think it's
because of the last thing is short one. That's the participants portal template. That's simply, I think we already touched it, but when you in the online, what you have to fill in these figures in the participants portal. And so you have to, and again, setting the scene. When you just put it as a point here, it seems like nothing, but you have to set the scene of real life. So you've just been going through all this process, and even if you've been through what we just covered, a horrible negotiation process, or you finally get it right, your brain is almost, it's fried, because at the same time with all this, you had to deal with content, finalizing the written parts of the proposal, doing review of the seconds you haven't seen for 1 month, for instance, or stuff like this. Other kinds of problems related to that.
You're also gonna be dealing with a system that is horribly unintuitive, even though they've been upgrading it several years, and it does not make it smarter. It just makes it different, and it continues having really, really annoying situations. For instance, in my organization, when I started, I took over the position as leader, of course, and started. What usually happens if you come into an organization that is young or inexperienced with this is that they have maybe applied for one application, and they do not have a validated PIC number yet. Meaning that they probably do not have all the correct roles already enrolled into the system. This is probably a completely different podcast, but to make it short, you have to involve a lot of high-level people in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in my situation, there was a chairman of the board, which is is a very, very, very high up senior C-level person from an international IT company
Mm-hmm.
who do not have the time to micromanage the EU portal with me. But simply because of the rules and the commission, there was no way around. I would have to have this person's copy of her passport, her written in ink signature, send it to me from Palo Alto, where she was situated at that point of time that week. Very funny, annoying a person like this, especially at off time. Then you have a system that is created in a sense. So let's say, Nils, you are the coordinator. You are now in charge of the project. We have all sent in what we need to send in.
Yeah.
We've been into these horrible templates online, the portal, filling out numbers. Everything is looking okay now. You are short. You are slowly moving this super tanker into port.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have to do much anymore.
No.
But we will, and when I say we, my organization, not only me as Lear and person in contact on this application for my organization, but everyone else involved of the C-level people that are in the portal will start getting notifications from the system. For instance, a lot of these notifications will be in the form of emails that will say things like, now you have to do something. And it's usually something surrounding, you have to approve, you have to check, you have to sign, you have to approve. It's bombarding these mails out in EU lingo, of course.
Yeah.
That always sound challenging. They sound important. They sound super alarmist. And 95% of them, even I, as the person in charge of my organization on this proposal, is emails that I should ignore completely.
Yeah.
They still send them out, and they send them out to everyone. Very annoying. And this can instantly start you being contacted by everyone.
I'm going to have
or people going in and change things.
I'm going to have a dedicated episode on the participants portal, but the only thing we need to touch upon here is the budget template inside the portal. And that's a quite simple issue, right? Because the issue here is if you made a mistake somewhere in the template Excel sheet you have from the partners, where there is a discrepancy between the actual figure. There's a mistake somewhere, and you fill that in to the table, and it doesn't correspond to how it is supposed to be. Then you cannot submit. It says there's an error of somewhere, and then you need to identify where that bloody error is.
You have a lot of errors.
I've been trying it a couple of times, and I managed to, in not too long, to identify where was the place. But if you have, and that's even with 35 and 40 parts. But it is when this happens. This is if you are in good time, so to say. If you are well in advance, then it might be 3 days before submission. Something like some submit a week before if they're really well prepared. I know of people who can do this who are very strong. But normally I've always been sitting with this I always submitted 24 hours before deadline, the first draft, to make sure there's something there. So I will be sitting with this 2 to 3 days before the deadline. I would fill in the budget to understand if everything fits, and if there's a mistake, it's gonna take. And you do not. This is a point of time you do not have time to start looking for this.
That's the last time I participated in podcast. I believe I told you about the SME proposal that I wrote in a week. Full experience. I think that was 14 errors that I was sweating down my face. We had half an hour to go, and I was going through these errors. panicking.
The stress you have in this situation, it's unexplainable how rough that is.
Well, because of course this was a week, so it doesn't sound like a lot of time invested, but it was perhaps 12 people's time for a week that I had invested. Yeah, this is something that you need to be aware of, that you are probably, if you're in good time, as you say, you're in a couple of days in advance. So you need to set time off for this, or be mentally aware that this is going to happen. You might find errors and they're going to be hard to find. The best advice I can give is ally yourself with somebody who's good at error finding. Maybe somebody who knows a bit IT savvy, not a programmer or something like that, but somebody who understands these kinds of systems, because and understand the logic of these kinds of errors. That it could be a comma error, it could be something very minute that
typo.
will then a typo that will transfer into something that looks horrible, horribly wrong. And don't give up. Keep searching for it. Keep trying to change it.
I think what I've been doing, and that's where you need to try to get a calm stomach when you sit with all budget tables from partners. Everything is in place. You have made the Excel table. You start to be a little bit, try to calm down. When you fill your draft in Excel, be calm. Check each partner's table, what you have agreed on, and so on. Fill them in just slowly without rushing too much, because then you make sure that at least you have the figures from the partners you agreed on is correct. They are correct. Now, what you have in big companies like P&O and most consultancy companies would have this. I think all have an Excel spreadsheet with all the calculations, very detailed Excel sheet with complicated calculations. So that makes this for you. That simulates the portal. We had we had a table that simulated that portal. So that would also, if you work for a consultant, that helps you, of course, a lot. But if you don't, then this is the best advice I can give, because I've been doing this without having such a tool. Is be calm.
Don't recreate it yourself in Excel. Don't recreate it yourself in Excel, because what they've probably done at P&O and other private consultancies and large universities who do this, there's happening a lot of different kinds of conversion and how many how do you say that, numbers after how many decimals you have in, for instance, can change everything completely. You can, if you're Danish, you might be operating in the local currency, and then transferring it into euro, and then thus changing everything. There's a lot of error that can come here, and you need to ally yourself with somebody who understands how the system look, or investigate it, make a trial application, and go through the application part in there. Because if you are in a situation where you are potentially applying for cascading grant or financial support for third parties, I think they're calling it now in some weird abbreviation. It's not called cascading anymore. Or if you are working with a linked partner, a linked third party partner situation, then the buttons for opening up their part of the budget are super hidden. Very difficult to spot if you've never done it before. That could be a game changer. I tried that for the first time. I've been doing tons of projects, and suddenly I had this kind of linked partner situation, and I just didn't know where to put it. And these systems, because you're not seeing it that much, they are difficult and it's confusing. And just explain to your partners, when are you to do basic things in there, have different ways into the system. And also a final part about doing this. If you're ever into the EU portal, like I would probably say that if I log in right now, I'll see at least 3 different red signed notices of this site being unavailable at some point during the next 24 hours. Might be in 3 hours, might be 6 hours period, whatever. And it's different parts of the system that'll be taken down and be worked on maintenance or something like that. and they don't really take consideration that you have a deadline. Because there's
No.
deadlines all the time. This is a pot of money that is roughly 90 million or 90 billion euros. So your considerations and your call are not important.
No.
So
The
look
only
at these.
The only thing they do is that they move them if they can see. Okay, that was unfortunate, and then they move the deadline date maybe a week, something like that.
You could be lucky that that will happen, but you might also not be lucky. You might be disregarding them after seeing them every day and seeing, no, that's not a part of this call. It's not part of this part of the section that I'm putting in. Suddenly it is, and you can't save what you didn't notice. Save and validate.
Yeah.
Save and validate.
Yeah, I will get back to that in my participants portal. What that means, because you will learn it when you do deal with the participant portal. You will know exactly what Jonas is talking about. Save and validate.
And Sigma. You should do a post proposal horror show on the Sigma.
The Sigma.
Yeah, isn't it called that way anymore? ZYGMA. Yeah. During Horizon 2020, that was, I think that was what part of the system were called when you were running the economics on a running project. And that is the worst UI I've ever seen in an IT system. Sometimes I feel like I've always, before, now I'm not really, it's not my sole occupation is applying projects anymore, but I used to, when people complain, I used to look at them and say, especially my interns, when I was in Brussels with you, I would say, but if this was not this complicated, we might not be having a job.
Yeah, exactly. That's what consultants say to each other all the time. May the good Lord make the commission make complicated proposal
and every
procedures.
Time they're talking about simplifying it and making it more intuitive. We're all having champagne and wondering what madness they're now thinking about. It never gets easier. It just never gets easier. It just changes, and it's equally as horrible. Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. No, we should be happy the commission they serves money for us. Yeah. I always pat them on the back, but they also need to be criticized for the things that makes things horrible for people. So
yes, yes, they do.
The Grand. No. On that note, toughest challenge, my usual segment here. What's the toughest challenge with the budget mesh, Jonas? From everything we just went through.
Toughest challenge?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that errors. When you've missed something, when you missed a cardinal rule, for instance.
Yeah.
Something that I think it's worse than when people are bad actors. It's when you as a consultant or coordinator miss something vital.
Yeah.
That is thus killing your chance because you weren't aware. Because they usually the rules are usually quite simple. No, not simple, but they're the same usually. They're consistent.
Yeah.
But then suddenly it's changed a little bit. They change the wording. They do that a lot. So especially every time there's a new framework program, and sometimes also in between these 2-year segments or 1-year segments, they will change some of the buzzwords.
Yeah, that's rough. I've tried that also myself, where you simply, there's an element you oversaw, you overlooked. Yeah, you overlooked something as the one that is supposed to know. And we didn't touch about your own errors much here in this sec, but it indeed, because you do it's.
It's systematic. If it's systematic, and you have to get a hold of all the partners.
You make mistakes when you work with this also as the one that is supposed to know. You make mistakes, and sometimes the mistakes you make, they have an impact on what you're supposed to, and that's rough. That's extremely uncomfortable, especially when it's in the end of the process here, because people get very angry.
Anything that kills, also that potentially kills the project beforehand, and if it's in this situation, of course, it's the budget that makes the problem. When it kills it at the end, that is the worst feeling.
Yeah.
I've been I think I've had quite a lot of wins through my application career, but I also do not take it too bad when I lose. It's never fun, but it's not something I'm crying about because it happens.
Yeah.
And a person who is not losing in EU grants, a person not doing EU grants.
Yeah.
Fake high win percentages are usually what I just said they were. They're fake.
Yeah.
But having a non-submission due to these things at the late stage, like a couple of days before deadline or the day before, that is the worst feel. Simply the worst.
Yeah. That's and even if you don't, even the feeling of you're about to losing it, that's that alone is yeah. It's I'll say for me, it's the when things starts to erode, when you feel you're losing the grip on a process that you've been working on for 7-8 months. If you feel that shit, like people really get angry, and you feel that the everything is like a balloon with a needle. Yeah, it's everything good is suddenly sieving out of something that you've been working on yourself for so many hours.
What you have out of it is people not liking you.
Yeah, thinking it's a horrible process you made. That's rough. Yeah, that's rough.
Truly.
No, this has been a very long episode, so it's definitely going to be a two-parter. I'm working on a concept now. I'm developing a segment of episodes that I'm calling the Grand Shorts, where I will try to develop a concept where I will have 20-25 minute episodes. So that I will come. That's in the machine room of the Grand, because these episodes, my normal episodes, they go from anything between an hour and 20 minutes to 2 hours, where I have to.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's because, as I always say, it's very difficult to cut down on content when you talk about these things, because there are so many things relevant to touch upon. It's just you cannot make you're not making an episode like we just did in 20 minutes.
I have threatened my team in my organization threatened it with forcing them to listen through my whole podcast session with you for an hour and a half.
Excellent. So they will have 2 hours now, I can see. And counting. No. My dear listeners, I hope you're still with us out there. Now we are moving towards the end. Thank you for listening to the end. Jonas, thank you for coming in. I'm just going to land this plane. So, everybody, as you know, this is my the ending preach as always. By all means, if you like what I do here, support me by subscribing to my email list on thegrand.eu. There you will also find the whole universe. I have now a very solid handful of episodes in there. By now, when this is released, this should be around 45 episodes. Go in, check, and see if anything else is to your liking. If you're listening to this, you're doing a proposal, most likely. So you will have the Timeline series, which has now reached 20 episodes, which is soon covering the whole process from your basic idea until you submit the proposal. So that should be coming handful for most people, especially people who have not done this a lot. Do also remember that I try to build a hub with links and resources for all kinds of directions, with webinars from the Commission, with companies that are offering different kinds of services. I don't get any affiliation links yet, or fees, still non-commercial and independent. But I like to gather things that can be of any help for you, and then you decide yourself if you want to get some help from these companies. I also have some platforms that are free of charge, where you can find partners and so on. You also have a link to the participants portal that we've been talking about today. And then also the IPR help desk, I guess, are people that can help with what we talked about today. And there are national NCPs national contact points. We didn't talk about that, Jonas, actually. Where can people find help for these things? But in general, check your national contact points. You should know them if you follow this series, because I've mentioned them before. That was that.
Absolutely.
Now I landed that plane. Sometimes it's I forget to say things, but that's that. So, Jonas, thank you so much for coming by.
Welcome. Thanks you for having me.
As always, very nice. And looking forward to seeing you again. So, bye, guys.